Hey guys, and this is just a continuation of our scavenger hunt series that goes over biblical characters that God still used even though they got distracted by other things. And this series again isn't a reason for you to be like, okay, well, even if I sin a lot, God's still going to use me. Well, yeah, it's true. He's still willing to use you, but sin always results in something bad. It's always a consequence of some kind because there's consequences for every action. So it's not just like saying, hey, here's a free pass to sin. No. But it's also a series that is telling you, don't beat yourself up when God's forgiven you, and don't think that He won't use you because He will. Now we're going to talk about Abraham. And Abraham, God gave him a covenant and promised him that many descendants were going to follow him. Now that's a big deal. He said many descendants are going to follow you, so like a nation will be born out of Abraham. That's a pretty big deal. Genesis 17:3, starting with verse 3, it says, Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you will be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham, for I have made you the father of multiple nations. So that's the covenant that God has with him. The huge deal, really big deal. And Abraham was very faithful to God, but he still messed up. For one, we had when God told him, hey, even though you're like an old grandpa, you and your wife are going to conceive children. Him and his wife actually laughed about this because Sarai was way, way, way past her childbearing years. And so what he did was they actually laughed at him. They had disbelief. They didn't believe what God was saying. Okay, and as we talked about in the scavenger hunt series, message series so far, every time we go down one of those paths, we don't believe God. And we take our life into our own hands, and that's what they did there, and they laughed at him. And they went even further into taking their lives into their own hands, and Sarai had Abraham. She said, well, I have an Egyptian slave named Hagar. You should conceive a child with her because she can conceive a child. And let's read that passage and just see where that goes. It's Genesis 16. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Abram agreed to what Sarah said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai took his wife took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she had begun to despise her mistress. So Hagar despised Sarai. Then Sarai said to Abram, You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. Your slave is in your hands, Abram said. Do with her whatever you think is best. Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. So Hagar then fled. Then the angel of the Lord found Hagar near the spring in the desert. It was a spring that was beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where you come from, and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarai, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all of his brothers. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me, for she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Beer Lai Roy. but is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Okay, so what we have there is God said to Abraham and Sarah, there he was like, "Hey, I'm going to make it so that Sarah will become pregnant," and they didn't believe him. And so Abraham went outside of his covenant with his wife and had relations with Hagar, and then she gave birth to a son named Ishmael. And because of this, because of their disobedience, Ishmael is going to be a crazy dude, and all of his descendants are going to be crazy. They're going to be hostile to everyone, and they're just, frankly, they're just going to be crazy people. And this was all because of Abraham and Sarah's disobedience. But yet God still said, because it's in Genesis 17 that I read that Abraham is going to be the father of many nations. God still wanted Abraham to be the guy that he had all of the descendants of Israel and many nations. So that happened in Genesis 16, and in Genesis 17, God still said, "Hey, Abraham, you're still going to be the father of many nations," and he kept his covenant. He had a covenant with Abraham there. He decided that he's going to have a covenant with Abraham, that he was going to make him a father of many nations. And later on, in passages, Abraham lied about Sarah being his wife and said that she was his sister, just because he was afraid that they might kill her or take her away from him if he told leaders like leaders of nations that she was his wife. And God still said, "Hey, I'm still going to keep this covenant with you. Even though you did sin, you were disobedient, I'm going to keep my covenant with you." So again, even through Abraham, we can see that God is faithful through the sins of these characters. And he is faithful even through our sins. And he is such a good God, and it's because of God that special things happen through our lives, not because of what we did. So just remember that no matter what you get distracted by, Jesus is always one turnaround away, to where you can fix your eyes back on him, and God is always willing to use anyone. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll have 2 other choices tomorrow.